everyone, my name is Mala and I'm the Director of Tech for Social Good on the Social Impact team at a company called GitHub. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about something I get asked all the time, which is how do I get a job in the tech industry coming from the social sector / nonprofit sector. This video is not going to cover recommendations for certificates or tech boot camps or other additional education investments. It's instead going to focus on how to leverage your existing social sector / nonprofit skills and experience. Those of you who work in tech probably know what GitHub is, but if you don't, GitHub is where more than 73 million software developers in nearly every country in the world write, manage, and collaborate on code. Now, GitHub is a big tech company headquartered in San Francisco, and it's owned by Microsoft. I live in New York City, and I work remotely full-time for GitHub since April 2019. Prior to that, I worked in a field called Tech for International Development. I worked for the United Nations and a few INGOs and small private companies. Alright, boring part. Before we delve into the topic of making the jump to the tech industry, I do have a few disclaimers. First, the opinions expressed in this video are strictly my personal views, not that of GitHub, Microsoft, or any future employers. Second, some of you may know me for the research I do in the social sector, but these videos are only based on my experience and not on extensive research. And third, while I wish everyone watching this the best, I cannot take any personal responsibility for the outcomes of anyone's job search, interviews, or potential employment offers. Alright, so let's get started. First, what is the social sector and why do I use that term? So I define the social sector as nonprofit or for-profit organizations or companies that primarily work on the sustainable development goals or on another aspect of equitable human development. So these include UN agencies, some nonprofits, NGOs, INGOs, think tanks, but they also include some for-profits, including B Corps. Now, the reason I use the term social sector instead of nonprofit is because some nonprofits don't focus on anything to do with the SDGs or on equitable human development, and then some for-profit companies do. Second, what are tech companies? The way I define tech companies is those that offer products or services primarily through or related to digital platforms like mobile phone apps, native desktop apps, websites, wearables, or smart devices. I'm sure everybody's heard the term big tech, and that generally refers to companies with a valuation of at least $1 billion. Now, there are plenty of smaller tech companies globally, and regardless of size, some tech companies are B2B, some are B2C, and some are both. Alright, so how can you translate your social sector career and experience to the tech industry? So I have 6 major ways to think about this. Thematic knowledge, transferable skills, where the team sits in an org chart, newness of the role, user base, and teams to consider. Thematic knowledge. So most social sector organizations work in thematic areas like food security or public health or criminal justice reform. Some work in education or climate change. And some tech companies might value your thematic knowledge in these areas more than others, and the key is to figure out which ones. So for example, if you worked in an education nonprofit, you might want to first start with tech companies that focus on things like digital skilling or instructional design. 2. Transferrable skills. Now, if you have a tech role in the social sector like front-end web development, this is obvious. You may also have a tech-adjacent role like UX or human-centered design, so that might still be a bit obvious. Now, the actual technology that you work with in the tech industry is probably going to be more advanced than what you do in the social sector, but then you're also going to deal with things in the social sector that you wouldn't have to in the tech industry. Regardless, having hard skills will definitely give you an advantage in making the jump over. Now, if you don't have tech or tech-adjacent roles currently, some commonly sought-out transferable skills are project management, finance, and human resource management. I've also seen that monitoring and evaluation roles in the social sector are relevant to a lot of data science roles in the tech industry, and then, of course, nonprofit fundraising roles use many of the same skills as tech sales. All right, so where the team sits within its organization chart also makes a difference. If a role is under the marketing department, in your CV or interviews, you might want to talk about how you're great at public speaking or how you're really good at building narratives. If the role is under the chief operating officer, then your organization and project management skills might be in more demand. A fourth thing to consider is if the role is new. Tech is always changing at a faster pace than most industries, and so many of the roles that come with it are completely new. And when I was in the social sector, I knew that I was good at defining completely new work streams, building out new teams, and pushing organizations to think about their work in new ways. And one of the reasons I got my job at GitHub was because the role was totally new. In my interviews, I was able to articulate a clear vision about what the role should do, the kind of research I wanted to do to carry out the programs into the long term and make sure they were evidence-based. And pursuing roles that are new can also be useful because sometimes you might want to pitch a company to create a role for you rather than waiting for them to create the role on their own. A fifth important consideration is if there is a user base for the company's products or services that you know well and you can help the company access. This was absolutely critical for me. So when I was in the social sector, especially at the UN, I knew that GitHub was the tool of choice for software developers in international development and public health. I also knew how popular GitHub was among software developers across all countries in sub-Saharan Africa because I had worked with many of them. But no one who interviewed me had experiences with those user bases, and so I was able to show I had insights and access to their user networks that even the company didn't really know about or think existed. So for example, maybe you work for a climate change action coalition and 200,000 of their members use a particular messaging app. You could apply to roles at that company that makes the messaging app and let them know that you're connected to that important user base. Lastly, another way to look for roles is just knowing the names of the teams that are most likely to hire people from the social sector. So common teams that I've encountered are social impact, education, policy, health, data science, global expansion, nonprofit sales, and DI&B, which stands for diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Some of those teams are also titled DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, now that we've covered ways to translate your social sector career and experience to the tech industry, here are my tips before and during your job search. Create a portfolio, think about how to engage staff, figure out why your networks are relevant, network at relevant tech conferences, learn about the tech basics, and highlight how your background gives you critical advantages. All right, first, create a portfolio. I cannot emphasize this one enough. Even if your portfolio is a simple one-page website or blog that details how you successfully managed a few projects, a portfolio is standard bearer in the tech industry, and it really helps recruiters and hiring managers in the tech industry understand how your career is relevant. A lot of social sector job titles, mission statements, organization charts, and revenue streams make no sense whatsoever to people in the tech industry, so it's good to be proactive and make it crystal clear how your experience is relevant. Even though I didn't end up in a UX role at GitHub, having a UX research and design portfolio on my website clarified to the recruiter that I understood a tech discipline and am capable of learning others. Especially in social impact roles, a lot of companies want to know how you're going to engage their staff in your work. Now, this was completely new to me. I went to grad school for international affairs, and I spent a lot of my career at the UN, which is highly competitive. So I was never responsible for or even expected to engage people who weren't experts in a relevant discipline. At GitHub, the way I accommodated this ask was to start a skills-based volunteering program, and I then hired somebody to take it over. The other programs in my portfolio are now great pipelines to new, interesting, and relevant skills-based volunteering projects to engage GitHub staff. All right, so this one I've already covered with the company's user base, so I'll just restate it here. Figure out how and why your networks are relevant to the company. As part of that exercise, learn the basics about the tech and its disciplines, and know why you would want to work there instead of for a direct competitor. All right, there are some critical advantages that come with having social sector backgrounds that might make you uniquely competitive. Are you an exceptional manager in a really difficult situation? Or are you an incredible mentor to people from underrepresented backgrounds? Can you stretch limited budgets? Or do you have networks in hard-to-reach geographies or populations? If so, call that out. The final two tips are a bit more obvious. Attend a network at tech conferences and check out different job boards. So in the comment section, I posted a few that might help you find your next role. All right, lastly, I want to talk directly to the tech companies. So at the time I filmed this video, Russia is fighting for control in the sovereign nation of Ukraine. There are violent conflicts on nearly every continent. The effects of climate change have increased the frequency and intensity of catastrophic natural disasters, and the world is arguably more polarized than ever. Even if these huge issues can't be solved through tech alone, tech companies do have an important role to play. Plus, focusing some of your resources on important global issues gives your staff a sense of pride and motivation, and that can make a big difference when it comes to competitive talent hiring markets. The work I do at GitHub helps the company stand apart from its competitors, and in my 3 years there, a dozen people have reached out and said it was one of the reasons they accepted an offer. So hire more social sector people. It's an incredibly effective way to figure out how your company can make the best positive impact. Well, if you want to read more about my work or get in touch, you can go to malakumar.com or socialimpact.github.com. That's all from me. Good luck with your search, and thanks so much for listening. Bye.